about the immigration executive order from
I'd
this
like
week.
to talk about the SNL skit that they did
Oh, the
last
bill.
night.
I'm
Oh my
just a bill.
God.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, we are live. This is the Bread Oilers show. We got a special kind of in between episode for y'all. Mr. Mr. Scott wanted to do an episode because he was so drunk on a Sunday afternoon, but he got so drunk he couldn't join us. So it's down to us three. So we got Zach, the human fact-checking machine,
What's up?
our usual host. I get to introduce because I hit the start button today. But and we also have Mr. Raymond from the deep South Michigan.
Yeah,
Um,
deep South Michigan. Right, right.
yes, absolutely.
Detroit.
And we have myself, Mr. G Dub from just north of Hotlanta. So, gentlemen, I know we don't have any actual topics to talk about, but we have a pretty major immigration bill or executive order, I should say, that was passed. Zach, you're the human fact-checking machine. Why don't you give us the details?
All right, so this executive order does two things. It allows, pretty much what it does is it stops deportation. So it doesn't actually grant asylum or anything that. It just literally stops all deportations and any government's actions on deportation for a select group of immigrants. And those immigrants are people who were brought here illegally as minors. So say your parents were foreigners and they snuck into the country and they brought you with them. You are protected because you were a minor, and so they can't, according to the executive order, you can't be deported. Now you're technically still undocumented, but now what this does is it opens up an opportunity for you to apply for a green card, whereas before you didn't have that right to apply for a green card. So now you have the right to apply for a green card. The second group of people that are protected are anyone who has a child who is an American citizen or a parent who is an American citizen that is here illegally. So say your parents came here illegally and had you here in the United States, you're automatically a U.S. citizen. Now your parents can't be deported because they're your parents, and they're the parents of an American citizen. So parents of an American citizen now get to stay in the country, and they too can also apply for a green card so that they can legally work. Those are the two provisions, and it ends up being about 4.9 million people that. Well, the estimate has changed. If you ask Republicans, they say it's 5 million people that are protected by this new order, and Democrats say it's only 4 million people that are protected by this order.
Are there any like caveats to this order where, like, say, mom and dad birthed the baby but threw the baby over the border just in the nick of time, and therefore they can have,
You mean
amnesty?
the Republicans say it's 5 million and the Democrats say 4.9?
No, the Democrats say it's closer to 4.5, really. And
It's
about
agreement
5
they've
million.
had on anything.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the debate on the Keystone Pipeline where the Louisiana senator said it would create millions of permanent jobs, and the Democrat senator said it would create 35 jobs.
Yeah. That's and so that actually those two items are loosely connected or indirectly connected in the sense that our biggest fear about immigrants is that they take Americans. Their biggest fear. It's not about protection of our culture or protection of tax dollars and the way we utilize them and the resources. I mean, those are things that people complain about, but in all reality, people are afraid that these immigrants will take American jobs. And this pipeline, Keystone Pipeline, a lot of construction jobs go, especially out in the West, go to immigrants. And a lot of the now the company that is actually building it, TransCanada, who's actually building the Keystone, says there's only going to be about 2,000 jobs created. They admit that there's only going to be about 2,000 jobs created when they actually build the pipeline, and then another 35 to 50 to maintain the pipeline once it's actually built, once it's completed. So the
Now, is that including the disaster cleanup people?
Yeah.
oh no.
It's just
So
wild.
it's not that. But here's the thing with disaster cleanup. Most of those people are volunteers, anyways. People are like, oh, there's this whole horrible thing. I'll go volunteer my time to clean up the environment. So, yeah, we're not really encountering that. But there was a Democrat senator from.
I like how you had a real response to that question. Now, I like I was just trying to make a joke, but go ahead.
There was a Democratic senatorial candidate. She's running for, or she's an incumbent right now, and she's running for the Senate. And she said there's currently hundreds of thousands of pipelines in the United States, and we're concerned about a pipeline that'll be less than 2,000 miles.
Hold on a second. This pipeline literally goes from Alaska all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico.
No, it doesn't go from Alaska. It goes from the tar sands in Alberta. So,
Okay.
But it is pretty high up. But yeah, you're right. It goes all the way to the.
provinces, yes.
So it's about 2,000 miles long. It's 1,864 or something like that. So it is a pretty long pipeline. However, it's not our longest pipeline. It's not our biggest pipeline. And we already have hundreds of thousands of pipelines in the United States that crisscross the United States. So, so when you look at it from that point of view, it sounds like, okay, maybe this isn't that big of a deal. But, there's a lot of other issues that are going on with this. One, it started when the BP Gulf Coast disaster happened. And then right at the same time, Michigan had the big pipeline that broke over in Kalamazoo. And so there was two major issues that were happening right when they were trying to get their permit, and so that's why they were brought into the news. Otherwise, people wouldn't have noticed it. This would have gone through, and no one would have noticed. If it wasn't for the oil disasters that happened simultaneously to them filing for permission to do this.
So remind me while I give a fuck.
Well, the reason to give a fuck is because, and I'm more concerned with this, not about the environmental disaster, because actually oil doesn't really, it destroys an environment for a couple of years, but oil is natural, and it'll come, those areas typically come back pretty strong without any, what we've noticed so far, not any long-term effects. One thing that concerns me is the eminent domain policies that the governments are able to take property away from farmers and ranchers all throughout the West and build this pipeline on it.
So is this pipeline going to be straight? Is it going to be a straight shot, or is it going to curve and line?
Not exactly straight. It will curve here and there, to accommodate. It can't go through a city, but it'll be able to go around a city and stuff like that. And they'll keep it in rural areas as best as they can. The problem is, while oil may not destroy a land permanently, if you're a farmer and there's a leak on your property, it'll destroy your property enough to make you bankrupt, unless you are able to sue the company. The problem is, though, if it just contaminates your groundwater, it leaks out and contaminates your groundwater somehow, that's going to be really hard for you to prove that contamination came from that pipeline. So there's a lot of issues with this, and I think the property rights, to me, seem to be the most pressing issues. That secondary is probably the environmental issues.
That's interesting. Now, have you read anything about insurance, oil insurance?
I didn't even think about that, but that seems, if I was an insurer and someone came and said, "Hey, I want to insure my farm," and we go out there and we look at it and we say, "Oh, you got this giant pipeline cutting through your farm," I might not insure that farm because the liability, the risk would be so high, or I may charge the farmer a shit ton of money to insure him to the point where he can't afford the insurance. You know? So yeah, that's a really good point, right? To consider is issues like that.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy. I wonder if they've even considered that.
TransCanada will buy insurance on the pipeline itself, to absorb, to help hedge any risk if the pipeline does break. That the insurance company pays for the cleanup rather than them. But that's fairly typical whenever you have all these oil rigs, all these BP was and Halliburton were fined big time, but they had hedged their money with insurance companies, so it was really insurance companies that paid this big payout. I mean, it was fined to BP, and BP just turned over the claim to whoever their insurance company is. So they didn't actually probably pay a dime of it. The insurance company probably picked up at least the majority of whatever BP's deductible is. BP probably had to pay, but
yeah, I wonder what the deductible is on like a massive environmental disaster of the century.
It's probably $500.
Yeah.
When you're the BP exec going into like Geico,
yeah.
$10,000 deductible. Oh, we'd rather it's $500. We'll pay the extra premium. We're cool.
We'll pay the first $500 of any damage. Yeah. Yep. So the immigration though, it's kind of tied into this. The key, well, it's indirectly tied into the Keystone pipeline.
Hold on, one thing real quick. I was just thinking, I want to see the State Farm commercial. Like, I just created a huge environmental disaster. State Farm is there. And the guy appears, guy starts scrubbing off the penguins.
Oh, dude, there was a major study done after the right about the same time as the BP oil spill, or it came to light after the BP oil spill. How they always show those Dawn soap commercials where the birds are washed by the researchers have gone back to sites 6 months after there's been a successful cleanup, and 6 months later, all these animals that were washed, and then they're all tagged. Usually, they take the time to tag them after they wash them too, so they can follow up on the progress. Almost all of them die within 6 months, anyways, and it's because they ingest so much oil. And it's not just what's on their backs, but what they ingest as well.
I thought you'd say they ingest so much Dawn soap.
It gets in their eyes and it burns.
Joking about animals dying is funny. So, anyways.
Yeah. No, but I guess getting back to the immigration thing, I think it's what it also does too is it allows children who are undocumented children to finally be eligible for Medicaid, and get health care treatments that they probably wouldn't have gotten. It allows there's some school districts in the country that refuse to admit immigrants that are undocumented. And so now this allows children in these situations to go to school. It also allows kids who are brought over here illegally by their parents or are born to illegal immigrants. It allows them to, one big thing that was problematic is when parents were illegal but their kids had to go to the doctors, they wouldn't take them for fear that when they show up to the hospital would turn them into the police, or turn them over somehow or report them. And so there was a big fear issue, and it's just a humanitarian, just a general good humanitarian issue. And they're already here. We're already paying the costs for them to be here. Let's have them documented, and so we know where they are. We can tax them appropriately when they become of age, and we can legitimize a section of our population.
Do we vaccinate everybody?
Yeah, why not? There's no reason not to. To get into public schools anyways, even if they were undocumented, most public schools require that the kids be vaccinated anyways. So, chances are they were getting vaccinated. They just weren't. They were paying out of pocket for it rather than Medicaid or here in Michigan we call it what do we call it? CHIP, Children Health Insurance Program, MCHIP, Michigan's Children Health Insurance Program. So that was paying for it, but or that pays for it for people who are poor, but not for immigrants. And so now that it'll cover people who are undocumented.
Where'd they get the money for this shit, man? Picking grapes, does it pay that well to be able to pay for your own healthcare and shit?
No, it doesn't. What ends up happening though is, I don't know, Ray, you probably knew about this, but when Ray and I worked at a restaurant together, most of the kitchen staff were immigrants, and I'm guessing most of them were undocumented because that's typical of the restaurant industry, or they were. Or
it's just you being racist.
Yeah.
No, they
racist.
were.
Racist.
No, I mean I know personally of I'm good friends with a couple of them that I know for sure are undocumented because they told me, but
some of my best friends are undocumented.
Some of my best friends are racist.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So what quite often is they appear to be documented by the companies that hire them because they all come in with the same, they use the same social security card or tax ID number card or of some sort, or they share green cards with multiple members of the family. They all live at the same. A lot of them, there was a couple guys that worked at the restaurant Ray and I worked at that they lived in a house with 19 other people, and it included families. It wasn't just all guys, bachelors living together, and it was a 4-bedroom ranch house, so they all live in this house and they all share about 2 or 3 green cards and bring home the money. And then so when they go to the doctor's office, they go to different doctor's offices and they say this kid hasn't had his vaccines, and that kid's not really who they're presenting the kid to be, just so they can make sure every kid gets their vaccines, stuff like that. So they got to play a lot of these,
well, I imagine that's going to be the next issue on the, in the news, controversies about people not getting their vaccinations or choosing not to get their vaccinations, and then yada yada yada.
Well, schools, but
a lot of these people are coming over the border, and they very well may be carrying things that in our country have been vaccinated for polio, smallpox, all that stuff. People that have not been vaccinating themselves are going to or may very well catch that stuff.
Yeah.
What percentage of these Central and South American countries are not doing the vaccinations? It seems to me, I don't know, I know of Americans that go to Mexico to get health care.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think it's probably, though, Gary, people who live in very impoverished parts of Latin America that may not have been exposed to the opportunities to get vaccinated. I don't know. The thing is, I mean, the swine flu, that epidemic that happened a couple of years ago, that started in Mexico City or just outside of Mexico City. That epidemic of it, so there is this fear, and not that there's a vaccination for swine flu. Well, maybe there is. I don't know, but I mean, Ray does bring up a good point, and there's a lot of fear behind this, and because we just don't know, and the average person doesn't know whether immigrants are vaccinated or not, and um, that's something we have to consider. But I think it's to our advantage to actually vaccinate them, to make sure our kids don't get sick, and that way down the road, because they're going to stay, we're not going to end up sending them back most of the time, and they're eventually going to be able to vote. They're eventually going to be taxpayers, so it's good to have a healthy population.
Shouldn't we worry about Hollywood liberal right-wing nuts fucking vaccinating their kids before we worry about immigrants, though?
Oh my God!
I mean, that's the one thing that right-wing
the
psycho bags and fucking
Jenny McCarthy's who think they're
scared of vaccinations.
Yeah,
Well, there's a lot of I don't know. There's a lot of controversy that says that a lot of these vaccinations contain harmful elements like mercury or
Ray. You know who the controversy is?
Blah blah blah.
All these soccer moms that have no clue what science is.
Right.
When you ask scientists, there's overwhelming evidence that says no, these do not cause problems. The problem is that these people, they don't cause autism. The mercury in there is tolerable. It's no more higher than what you get in your average fish fillet from McDonald's. It's
Well, recently, a couple of years ago, I think I mentioned this on a previous show. I had my vaccinations again, and I did not catch the autism.
No.
So I actually received...
How do you know? Everybody Seinfeld said he's autistic, so he very well may be on that autistic spectrum.
Well, I
might be.
Sure there is.
But I received my vaccinations twice because I lost my records or whatever. So I got double doses and still have not received the autism, as far as I know.
Yeah, the evidence isn't there. Now, autism being genetic, that there is evidence of that, but it's not something you can catch from, or not catch, but it's not something that develops because of higher levels of mercury or whatnot. And it's sort of the same kind of debate of evolution and creationism, or global climate change. Man-powered global climate change. The scientists, people say, oh, there's this controversy. There's no controversy. Just because Fox dedicates 50-50 coverage over the two sides doesn't necessarily mean there's controversy. In reality, when you ask scientists, 97% of all scientists believe in global warming. 97% of all scientists believe in evolution. 97% of all scientists believe in vaccinations.
Well, and when talking about autism... A lot of people don't realize autism has only been the autistic spectrum has only really been identified since 1970. So it's a relatively new disease that people are exploring and scientists are exploring that we're still learning about.
Yeah, but I mean they have done the empirical research on the vaccines required for schools, and they can barely find a causality, or a correlation between vaccines and autism. Just because one health and news article once reported that there may be a correlation, now all these soccer moms across the country think that these shots give their kids autism. It's just bad science, and that's the problem with creating policy based on, I don't know if necessary we should have politicians create health policy, or if it should be, we should leave that to the hands of our scientists. Yeah, so that's my my point on that.
Well, I'd love it if this country trusted scientists. You know, it was funny. I started writing. I started covering persuasive essays in, my English class that I teach, and one of my students was like, "I think you do agree with medical marijuana," and we start talking about the case in Georgia where, the little girl, she had over 100 seizures a day, and then when she took the medical marijuana, she had 3 seizures a day. You know,
Yeah,
and she actually can use the strain called Charlotte's Web, which has the THC removed, which means you can't get high from it, but it still has some medicinal effects. It's like, well, how can I even fucking argue against that in any way?
yeah, yeah. And there's a lot of products out there, a lot of drugs that the FDA has just outrightly banned, and the DEA has classified probably incorrectly, which means scientists can't even do research on a lot of it. Uh, we technically can't do research on LSD. Yeah, LSD was originally created to help us solve some psycho psycho issues, and um, you know, by tying the hands of scientists prevents innovation, prevents true discovery, prevents progress, and you know that's what pisses me off the most is that people, you know, they believe the Bible is going to solve their problems, and to put your faith in a book that was written 2,000 years ago that has didn't understand what a thunderstorm was. Um, to me, it's extremely problematic.
Hey, is it though, or is it just their life? You know,
What?
I mean, um, like I don't know. Some people want to follow their own way, and that's their American choice, I guess. But I don't know. Maybe I caught the tail end of that and kind of screwed it up. Sorry, forget it.
No, no, I understand what you're saying is that some people don't want to be hassled by, you know, modern society and modern medicine and modern,
If you're a psycho
science. But
Christian and you're against modern medicine and you want to die of your preventable disease and you want to hate gay marriage and you want to go back to the Bible, what the Bible says, and say you know how big a stick should be that you beat your slave with, and women shouldn't teach men. Good for you. You should be allowed to live by those principles because this is a free country. But when our laws and legislation reflect those biblical bullshit laws, then that's when I have a problem. I think there should be pockets in this country where Christians can live by Christian law and women shouldn't be allowed to teach. And when they're on their period, according to Leviticus, they need to be locked in a little room by themselves. That's great. Good for you. You can follow that, but when other people who are non-Christian need to follow that, that's when I have a problem.
yeah, well, and even then though, Gary, there's the problem with sort of even allowing stuff like that to happen is, um, say you're a 13-year-old girl, you're born into this society, and you have no choice over this matter, and your parents decide, oh, you got your period, we keep you in a room for 7 days, and you're not allowed to go to school. Now their parents' rights are being projected onto this child, and that's when I have issues with it. Is situations like that. Now I don't mind, and so where do I draw the line? I don't know because I understand parents are always going to teach their children their ideologies and their dogmas. But when the ideologies and dogmas start becoming so invasive like that, that's when I have issues.
Yeah, well, that reminds me. It was actually after our Christmas party in West Palm Beach at the school I taught at. I started coming out. I had too many drinks. Told my girlfriend like, "Yo, you got to get me home." Fucking wasted. So these two little black girls approached me and like, start asking me, "Oh, have you accepted Jesus as your Savior?"
Oh!
No, I really haven't. Well, do you believe in God? And like, yeah, probably. And they started asking me some question, like, let me ask you a question. It's like, do you believe the Bible is the unfiltered, unadulterated, 100% Word of God? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, well, in Leviticus it says that women shouldn't teach men, so right now what you're doing is going against the Bible. It also describes how big a stick you should use to beat your slaves. Do you believe that slaves are okay? Well, I don't know. We never read that part. I'm like, well, maybe you guys should go home and read your Bible instead of come up here and talking to me about it. And that was kind of the end of the conversation. But, it's so true. Like, how many Christians conveniently leave out certain parts of the Bible when they're...
That's something I've always had a problem with is the selective enforcement of the Bible. Some things are okay, but some things aren't. I don't know if you guys just heard, but Texas on Friday passed the Texas Board of Education, the State Board of Education, finally approved the official history book for Texas.
Oh yeah, Moses is now founding father. That's crazy.
Yeah, Moses. And the book indirectly labels him a founding father in the sense that they said the Constitution is based on the Bible. But I don't know if people know this, but Moses was a dictator. He was a dictator of his population. He wasn't, elected by the people.
And he was an alcoholic.
Yeah, and he had multiple wives. So for us to say that this guy is what democracy is based on is bullshit. He came down with laws where no one got to vote on those laws. And when he saw people worshiping the golden calf, he smashed the laws and went and made harder, more strict laws. So.
I said Moses. I'm thinking of Noah. Noah was the alcoholic.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he was. I'm sure Moses was too. But.
Sure, all those guys were alcoholics, man.
Yeah.
Well, no, literally, if you in the Bible, after Noah, the Great Flood, the Ark, all that, made up bullshit. He established a winery, and according to the Bible, used to sit around naked and drunk all day in his tent, and his son came up to him while he was naked, and he banished his son from the land because he walked in on him drunk and naked.
Yeah, that's reasonable, man.
I mean, I like to be drunk and naked too, but
I don't want no gay in me or gay in my kids.
No, it's not gay. You walked in on your dad drunk and naked. You'd be banished. I guess that'd be the same thing if you were banished from your household because you walked in on your dad drunk and naked. Seems reasonable.
Yeah, the whole unreasonable part, I guess, is being able to build a boat big enough to fit all the world's creatures.
Right.
I guess that's the unreasonable part.
I can't remember. Did they have dinosaurs back then?
Well, I don't know. That's the part that gets me because I guess the world's only 5,000 years old, and dinosaurs are 300 million years old. So I guess the dinosaurs around before the Earth was? I don't know. I'm fucking confused.
Truth of the matter is, in Texas, creationism is true. So, dinosaurs and man did live and coexist.
What gets me is, okay, so the vast majority of Texas believes, well, I don't even know if that's true, but it seems like the vast majority of Texas believes in creationism. Yet, the oil industry is the biggest industry in Texas. Do they not know where oil comes from?
The ground.
Jesus.
It comes from Jesus.
Yeah, the blood of Jesus.
It's the blood of Jesus spread out throughout all of our bedrock.
Turn that water into wine.
And then wine into oil.
Fracking water into wine.
Dude, yeah, I mean, all the ancient vegetation that's, millions and millions of years old and dinosaurs, all their composite sludge, once they decay, turns into oil. A lot of people don't know that. And that's what we burn for fuel. That's why we call it a fossil fuel. Because it's the fossils of old. It's not really the fossils, but it's, the remnants of old life on Earth.
It's also what we make frisbee discs out of.
Yeah, plastic
and
is a
also
byproduct.
what we make little,
Dryer
vents
vents.
or dryer vents or whatever else that's plastic upstairs in the house.
Have that. What is that in your room? Is that your laundry room?
No, I'm in my studio, but that's my air conditioning vent.
Oh.
But yes, it's made out of dinosaur blood.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point.
Now to extend to that point, without oil, guys, we wouldn't have all the stuff that we have now.
Well, maybe. I mean.
No, how would you make plastic without it?
Well, a lot of plastic nowadays is made synthetically without oil. So we figured out ways to. But you're right. I mean, we needed the oil first to make the first plastics, and then from there we figured out ways to synthesize to synthetically make those plastics. But now a lot of plastics are synthetically made, and we don't need oil to do it. However, oil is still a better. The best use for oil is turning it into plastic. That's the highest use we can use it for, and it's also the most valuable. So when we sell a barrel of oil to be converted into gasoline and then burned, that barrel of oil we're only getting about $80 for. But when we sell a barrel of oil to turn into plastic, we're getting about $3,000 for it. Because the plastic that it creates is so much more valuable than the maybe not $3,000, maybe about $1,000 for it.
Sounds about right. I mean, I spent about $400 on the Xbox One.
And it probably has a quart of oil total in it, once they process all that oil into plastic. So yeah, and so we mismanage our own resources. We could be using this to make plastics. We could build buildings out of plastic instead of steel. We could we could use this oil for other things other than just burning it and contributing to our greenhouse effect.
Greenhouse. Who believes in that stuff? Bah.
A little global warming is good for the Earth.
Yeah. In my classes, I teach them that Michigan is going to be one of the few places on Earth that benefits from global warming because our winters will become more mild and our summers will become more cool over time. And so we'll end up being kind of like what England is today. That'll be very good for tourism.
It seems like, though, with global warming, doesn't cold temperatures get colder and warmer get warmer?
Well, it's global climate. Yeah, that's with global climate change. Extremes become more extreme. But there is, once the ice caps melt, we're not going to have the same amount of cold energy. I don't want to call it cold energy. We won't have the same amount of energy in the atmosphere. Not the same amount, but we won't have the same. So the storms that we get today are because we have cold fronts moving on top of warm fronts, and what we'll have is we'll have two mild fronts instead of a cold front and a warm front. And so because we have two mild fronts, we won't see the kind of activity. But this is way down the road in about 200 years when the ice caps are completely melted. So, yeah, we won't see it in our lifetime. I mean, we'll notice temperature differences, slight temperature differences, but it won't impact our way of life. Now, but by the time we're both, all three of us are in our 90s, and our grandchildren are kids and start having kids.
I'm not gonna live that long, but
yeah, not me either, man.
Well, Louisiana might be gone by then, so Louisiana, maybe most of Florida. It's not a good investment to, if you're looking at a.
Actually, I had a friend after the Al Gore movie, whatever the fuck that was called.
Yeah.
He bought property in Okeechobee thinking that was going to be beachfront in 10 years.
It'll take about 100 to 200 years, but there's a lot of people who are building sky rises in Florida who are looking at long-term profitability of those sky rises are second guessing building down there because they know in 50 years where they're building may be completely flooded, and so that building will be completely wasted.
Mm-hmm.
So unless they're looking for short-term gains and hope to sell it right away to someone who doesn't really care about, who's not thinking about the environment. Yep.
There's also a lot of people who have stopped building in South Florida who realize that they're building what used to be a good neighborhood and they're now building into what is called the ghetto. I noticed that when I was down there. It's like, oh yeah, this neighborhood's turned to shit. Everybody's shooting each other and robbing each other. So it's not worth what it was.
So they stopped their construction, or they're just not building at all.
Oh yeah, there was. I mean, I don't really know the actual reason and purpose behind it, but yeah, there was actually you drive down in Fort Lauderdale and you see this half-built apartment complex, just like the shell of an apartment complex. It was kind of sad. I mean, you think that'd be one of the places that's growing or doing well, and it just wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of places to end up turning out to be that way. Look at our old hometown. Have you been there lately? Have you seen the blight in Essexville?
Yeah, I know. For instance, my sister is buying a house for $20,000, so I can't imagine this doing too well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's buying a nice house for $20,000.
Where at, Gary?
Off Lafayette.
Oh,
somewhere.
okay.
But I mean, it's got a full basement, 2 bedrooms, carport, garage, fenced-in yard, and for $20,000.
Yeah. If you guys go into Zillow, have you guys ever used Zillow before?
All the time. That's how I see how much my house is worth.
You can look up foreclosures on Zillow, or soon-to-be foreclosures, so they must know who's behind on their payments.
Right.
Yeah.
And look up these foreclosures, and it's amazing. I looked up Bay City just last week, and there were enough dots in Bay City for recent foreclosures that I couldn't count them all.
Jeez.
And that's pretty crazy. I mean, it's Bay City was one of the cities that was least hit by the housing bubble pop, and there's still hundreds of foreclosed houses, and that's
a lot of that has to do with
for a buyer that's good, but if you own property or are trying to sell, that's not good for you at all.
Not at all. Yep, there's no jobs out there. There's no jobs at all.
Yeah.
Everybody's moving away. Or if they're lucky, they've already moved away.
Right. Yeah, Bay City really needs to work on figuring out their tourist industry and fix up that riverfront. If they can do that, if they can turn the riverfront into... What's that?
Maybe they could make it not smell like asshole.
From the sugar beet factory?
Or from Saginaw?
Maybe from the water treatment plant dumping raw sewage in the water.
Yeah.
I feel like you should slow down that.
Let's slow down on that a little bit here.
Yeah, that is true. They can, because that water treatment facility is right there by that. What bridge is that in Bay City?
All of them.
The Independence. Yeah, I think it's the Independence. It's right there by the Independence, and it really should be further away from the city itself. You know, why is it so close to the city?
Like Cary, Indiana, and put it in Saginaw.
Well, not upstream. Let's put it more downstream, more
Put it on Gull Island.
out and yeah, why not? There's no reason why we couldn't do that. We'd have to build a bridge out to it, but you know, why not put it out in Hampton Township? You know, past Finn Road Park there.
Well, that's where all the oil is.
Right next to AJ Wedding's house.
Well, that's where all the oil is, man. Can't do that.
Yeah, I know.
Protect the oil.
So no,
I just recently went out there. By the way.
What's that?
I said I just recently went out there. You know, I've lived there for what? How many years? Let's see, 18 years of my life. I'll make that. Yeah, 18 years of my life in the Bay City area, and never knew that there was a oil system there. Until after I graduated high school, I drove out there. I was like, wow, there's a whole bunch of oil out here.
Yeah, it's just really. It's not really.
Ray went out there to rip it.
It's where they drop off oil. It's not really where they collect oil from the.
Are you sure? Because what I saw were like pumps in the ground, just pumping it away.
Yeah, they're looking for natural gas. They're hoping to get some, but I think the facilities that are out there, they're mostly just tanks for. That's where most of I don't know if you guys remember, but remember where the Jupiter blew up?
Yeah.
No, I'm talking more farther out.
I know, but hear me out. Right along that coast, right where the Jupiter blew up, there used to be oil drums there, giant oil drums. I don't think they're there anymore. And they moved a lot of them out to that facility, Ray, that you're talking about. And that's where they drop off oil. So all the gasoline that we get for almost the whole Tri-City area comes from that facility right there. Oil and gasoline. So
that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
Too bad the Republicans didn't invest in Bay City on that regard.
Well, yeah, I mean it's close enough to Bay City. All those workers probably work in the Bay City area, you know.
Right.
So, I mean, you just got to be in proximity. You don't necessarily have to be right in it. Plus, we don't want that in downtown, anyways, right? Why would we want that stuff on our shoreline?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you look at oil boom towns, you know, like in North Dakota, that are just blowing up with you know, commerce and what have you, just because there's oil there and people are you know, getting it.
Well, yeah, but we don't.
Like
we don't really have the oil. We're just storing the oil so we can ship it easier across the thumb and mid Michigan, not because we actually produce the oil. You know, so there's a little bit of difference there. Plus, we don't want that to fuck up the scenery of downtown. We want our downtowns to look nice and quaint, so people are willing to come down there and spend money. I don't know, that's what I would do as a planner, anyways. All right, gentlemen, I have used up a good hour of my time, and I have to get on to grading. So.
Goddamn right.
Yep. G-Dub is drunk, but he still has to write a paper. So. Him and Johnny.
I got that 2-week grace period, so. Me and Johnny say.
Yeah. All right, gents. Hey, G-Dub, are you coming up for Christmas at all?
Probably not.
Oh, no?
Probably not. But I'll be here in front of this computer if we want to do the show.
All right, well, I was just thinking we should all do like a Blood Boilers Christmas thing. We'll just all get together and do something, but...
we might have to do that over the web.
Over the web. We could do a Secret Santa. We could send each other and then open them up on air.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
All right, guys. Well, I will see you guys later, and good show. I love this surprise show. And you guys have a great weekend, or rest of the weekend.
Yep.
All right,
See you on
later.
Wednesday.
All right, see you guys.
Bye.